Here's something I've learned. What you repeat, you reinforce. And what you reinforce begins to take shape in your life. Not because you declared it, but because you practiced it. Now, here's where most people miss it. They think their future is tied to what they plan to do, or what they want to do, or what they intend to do. Your future does not respond to intention, it responds to repetition. And this is where discipline comes into the conversation. Not as something extreme, not as something rigid, but as something consistent. Because discipline is not about doing something once, it's about choosing what gets repeated. Hello, welcome to the Shattered Mindset Podcast, wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. I'm your host, Melvin Larry. There's something happening in your life right now. And the truth is, most people don't even realize it's happening. Your future is already being decided. Not later, not when things slow down, not when clarity shows up. Right now. In the middle of your routine, your habits, your daily patterns, your future is being shaped. And here's the part that really shifted things for me. It's not the big decisions that determine where you end up. It's the small ones you repeat. Let that sit for a second. We give a lot of attention to the big moments, the big move, the big opportunity, the big decision. But life doesn't move forward based on what you do occasionally. It moves based on what you do consistently. You know, there was a time when I thought direction was something you chose in a moment. You decide, and then everything lines up. You make a move, and now you're headed somewhere new. Well, in a sense, yeah. But what I came to understand over time is direction isn't chosen once, it's reinforced daily. And sometimes it's not even intentional. Early in my life as a youth, I became aware of dialect and how I talked. And I didn't call it that at the time. I just knew I wanted to use words correctly and not sound, as people would say, I didn't want to sound country, okay? I was from Memphis, out in the South and so forth. So I just thought about how I talked. And I also remember walking down the sidewalk. I just remember this. I was walking down the sidewalk, and I remember as a kid and consciously holding my chest out and shoulders back. And nobody told me to do this. I had no idea about long-term ramifications, but over time, that has resulted in a greater awareness of how I carried and carry myself and conducted myself in various environments. I developed patterns. And that's where this really gets real, because whether we acknowledge it or not, we all have patterns. We all have things we repeat. And those repetitions, they don't just pass time, they build something. You might not even notice it right away. You don't feel it right away. And there's no alert that goes off, no sign that says this is shaping your future. It just builds, mostly quietly, through repetition. You ever found yourself looking back at a season of your life and thinking, how did I get here? How did I get there? Not necessarily in a negative way always, just in a real way. Like, when did this become normal for me? When did this become my routine? Okay? When did this become my standard? That didn't happen overnight. That happened through repetition. Here's something I've learned. What you repeat, you reinforce. And what you reinforce begins to take shape in your life. Not because you declared it, but because you practiced it. Now, here's where most people miss it. They think their future is tied to what they plan to do or what they want to do or what they intend to do, but your future doesn't respond to intention. It responds to repetition. Let me say that again. Your future does not respond to intention. It responds to repetition. And this is where discipline comes into the conversation. Not as something extreme, not as something rigid, but as something consistent. Because discipline is not about doing something once, it's about choosing what gets repeated. Now, let me slow this down for a moment. Every day, you're making decisions. Some small, some automatic, some intentional, some not even thought about. And those decisions, they don't just disappear, they stack. One decision might not mean much. One day might not feel like it matters, but when that same decision, that same behavior or pattern gets repeated, it begins to form something. And over time, that formation becomes direction. Now, here's something else I had to learn. The danger is not always in what you do once. The danger is in what you keep doing. That's where the impact is. That's where the shift happens. Because anything you repeat eventually becomes familiar. And anything that becomes familiar starts to feel normal. And once something feels normal, you stop questioning it. It was normal for me to be the quiet one. It was normal for me to not speak up, to not be assertive in business or in school. I had the intellect, but not the assertion. And then a gentleman came to me in a business environment. He said that I needed to turn my music up. Turn my music up. Okay, look, I had to think about that for a while, and this is where it really gets subtle, okay? Because it's not always about effort. Sometimes it's about tolerance. You know, what you allow, what you let continue, what you don't address. You know, and so I'm really glad that he came to me with that so that I could address that. I could do something about that. So every time you tolerate something, you're reinforcing it. Every time you let something slide, you're repeating it. Every time you say, I'll deal with that later, you're building a pattern. And over time, that pattern doesn't stay neutral. It moves, it grows, it builds. Now, let me take you into something that really shifted my perspective. There was a season in my life where structure carried me. In a working environment, especially schedules and systems and expectations. When you're in that kind of an environment, consistency is almost built in. You don't have to think about it as much. You just follow the flow. But when I stepped out of that environment, when I moved into entrepreneurship, that structure wasn't there anymore. And what I realized quickly was without structure, your habits really get exposed because now there's nothing forcing the repetition. It's on you. When I left corporate, what showed up was the awareness of my dependence and reliance on structure in my environment. What was required was my adjusting to self-discipline and realizing that I had to be a self-starter and even an inspirer of others. And that's where I started to really see, what I repeated showed up and it mattered more than what I thought or intended. Because I could intend to do something all day, but if I didn't repeat it, it didn't shape anything. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. They have good intentions. There's a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intention. Well, I don't know about that or whether that's so or not, but it sounds pretty good. Look, strong ideas, clear desires, but inconsistent patterns and inconsistency doesn't build direction, it delays it. Now, here's something else I want you to think about. You don't feel your future being built in real time. There's no immediate feedback, no instant confirmation, no applause. Always, you may be doing the right things and it feels like nothing is happening. You might be making small adjustments and it feels like it's not enough. But what's actually happening is something is being formed. It's called the difference between small right decisions and small simple errors in judgment. They all have an effect, okay? This is where people quit because they don't see the results yet. So they stop the repetition, not realizing that they were in the middle of building something, whether they could see it or not. Let me say this clearly. You don't recognize your future while it's being built always. You recognize it after it's been established. And by that time, it's already been shaped. Now, here's where this becomes empowering. Because if repetition builds direction, then you have influence. And repetition has influence. Not control over everything, but influence over what gets repeated. And you don't have to change everything at once. That's where people get overwhelmed, trying to fix everything, trying to overhaul everything, trying to restart everything. That's not how this works. This works through selection. What stays, what goes, what continues, what stops. Because whatever stays in rotation gets stronger. Now, think about this for a moment. What are you repeating right now? Not what you plan to do or what you're thinking about, not what you said you were going to start. What are you actually doing? Because that right there is pointing you somewhere. That right there is what's taking you somewhere. What are you actually doing consistently? All right? That's the significant thing. And sometimes that realization can be uncomfortable because it removes the guesswork. It brings things into focus. But it also gives you something powerful, clarity through awareness. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you recognize the pattern, you can't ignore it, or you can choose to. But that's where the shift begins, not in a dramatic moment, but in a conscious decision to adjust what you repeat, not perfectly or all at once, but intentionally. And over time, those small repeated adjustments, or they begin to redirect things, not overnight necessarily, not noticeably all the time. One day you look up and you realize you didn't just arrive somewhere, you built your way there through repetition, through discipline, through consistency. And that's what I want you to take from this. Not pressure, not perfection, just awareness. Because the truth is, your habits are already deciding something. The only question is, are they deciding what you actually want? And if something needs to shift, start small, stay consistent, and pay attention to what you repeat. Because what you repeat, you reinforce. And what you reinforce builds your direction. Look, I got to go, but I want you to just take note of what you do over and over and over. Is it a simple discipline or is it a simple error in judgment? Think about what you do because today does really matter. And this moment really does matter. Okay? And so what you do speaks so much louder than what you say. So until next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those new horizons. I'll see you the next time on the Shattered Mindset podcast. Take care. Take charge. God bless.